Hello guys, and a warm welcome back to this amazing YouTube channel. I hope you are doing well and I hope you're still enjoying your new year. My name is Lorna and I'm a planning and evolution engineer, and as I usually say, this is a YouTube channel where we share IT information which we feel like it's useful for us to grow our IT careers. That's why I usually tell you guys to kindly share the videos as much as possible, because I know you have your colleagues, you have your friends, you have your peers, you have people whom you know that these videos will be of interest to them. So kindly share as much as you can. Also, when you like on the videos, it's actually make it possible to be suggested to other people watching different YouTube videos. So kindly share and like as well. And of course, most importantly, subscribe to the channel and watch the videos to the end as well. So in this video today, I want us to look at specific points for DevOps roadmap. So in my previous video, which I talked about DevOps engineering, I gave like an overview of who a DevOps engineer is, like a general summary of what a DevOps engineer is supposed to know, and just basically who a DevOps engineer is. But in this video today, I put together like specific points which I feel like I wanted to share to give like a clear roadmap of what a DevOps engineer is supposed to know. So straight to my first point, as a DevOps engineer, you definitely, or as a person aspiring to become a DevOps engineer, you definitely need to understand operating system. You need to be able to at least deploy applications in either Windows or Linux operating systems, because those are the operating systems which you are using at the moment, Windows and Linux. And so as you plan to become a DevOps engineer, you definitely need to have this base knowledge of just administering servers, both Windows and Linux, using the command line on both Linux and Windows. For Windows, you also have Windows PowerShell, which you really need to understand if you're going to work on Windows servers. But as far as Linux is concerned, you need to be able to use the command line. The basic commands are for, deploying an application, checking if an application is running, checking for ports, open ports, closing ports using the inbuilt firewall for both Linux and Windows. So those are some of the things you really need to have as basics as you prepare to become a DevOps engineer. So just make sure that you're comfortable working with either Windows or Linux or both. I think actually both, but usually mostly applications will be deployed on a Linux server, so you definitely need to familiarize yourself with those basic Linux commands. Just make sure that you can at least deploy an application, do some practice on your own. Some of these things you can actually learn by yourself. You don't have to wait for someone to teach you. Once you have a guideline like this, it's now upon you to go and start learning, deploying an application, a small application, making sure that you can run those commands to check if it's running, to enable it, to disable it, and things like that. So make sure that you're very familiar with the administration of operating system like Windows and Linux. Number two, you need to be able to know some network protocols, and also definitely some basic networking. So protocols are definitely important when you're deploying applications. You need to know if you're using HTTP or there's use of SSL, so that you use HTTPS. You need to understand some protocols like SSH when you're logging into Linux servers, SSL terminations and things like that. And definitely you need to understand IP addressing, because every server that you have in your network has an IP address. So you need to know how to assign an IP address. You need to know how to assign DNS name, like a host name, or DNS for resolution, for IP resolution. Also, this kind of protocols like HTTP, HTTPS. When are you, deploying an HTTP web application, or when are you supposed to use HTTPS, and things like that. So make sure that you have this basic knowledge of the network protocols and some basic networking skills. My number 3 point is understanding of infrastructure. Remember, at the end of the day, you're going to deploy your applications in a certain infrastructure. So whether it's physical servers, you need to understand how to provision physical servers. Basically, just to, maybe put it in a network, give it an IP address, install an operating system, and install that application that you want to run in that physical server. And definitely, if it's not a physical server, it's probably a virtual machine. So you need to learn how virtual machines are provisioned. So that's when now you need to learn about virtualization, how you come up with virtual machines. How do you virtualize a physical server so that you get a virtual machine, so where you can run either Windows or Linux operating systems in them. So you really need to understand that kind of infrastructure, virtualized infrastructure. And if you're not using virtual machines and physical servers, then most likely you're using containers. So that's when you need to understand what containers are all about, and that's where Docker comes in, because as I said in another video, Docker is a container engine. It's used for creating containers. So you really need to understand how containers come about and how to deploy applications in containers. And definitely once you understand containers, then Kubernetes comes in, because once you're doing your stuff in production environment, you'll have more than one container. And so the only way to manage all those containers in a production environment is to use Kubernetes. So that's when you need to know what Kubernetes is and how it works. Another kind of infrastructure definitely is a cloud infrastructure. So a company could be deploying their services in a cloud infrastructure. So you really need to understand how a cloud infrastructure works. And you can actually start with one cloud provider, either AWS or Azure or Google, but I'll definitely always suggest that you start with AWS if you don't know any if you don't have any knowledge of cloud providers, because AWS, I find it easier to learn, and also because it has a lot of readily available content that you can use to learn how cloud works. So that's another kind of infrastructure that you really need to know. And of course, when you go to cloud, you will still find physical servers, you still find virtual machines, and you still find containers. So you just need to understand how a cloud infrastructure works. So if you've already understood physical servers and virtual machines and containers, then once you understand how cloud works, then it will still be easy for you to understand the physical servers in a cloud environment, or the virtual servers in a cloud environment, or containers in a cloud environment. So you really need to understand infrastructure. Number 4, understand how to provision infrastructure and how to deploy services or application in an automated manner. So this is where infrastructure as code comes in, and also configuration management tools comes in. So a tool like Terraform is used to automate provision of servers. It could be physical or virtual servers or containers. So it's one of the infrastructure as code tools. Actually, this should be as code, not uncode, as code tools. So you really need to understand those kind of tools that are used to automate provisioning of servers, either in your own in-house infrastructure or in a cloud environment. And Terraform is one of those tools that really come handy to automate provisioning of infrastructure. Another one is CloudFormation. That's specifically for AWS. When you want to provision servers in AWS, you use what you call CloudFormation. And then we have these configuration management tools, mostly for deploying applications. So maybe you want to deploy a web server in an automated manner. You use something like Ansible or Chef or Puppet. So you really need to understand these kind of tools. So you talk about infrastructure as code tools and configuration management tools. Another thing you really need to understand as you prepare to become a DevOps engineer is continuous integration and continuous deployment tools. These are the tools that enable like a continuous writing of an application, to testing, to deployment, either in a test environment, and finally to a production environment. So it gives that continuous way of creating, or rather coming up with applications, right from when it's being written by developers all the way to when it's deployed and when it's monitored. So those are what we call the CI/CD tools. And the most commonly used tools definitely is Git for version control, and then GitHub is a repository for storing code. Another one is GitLab, and then Jenkins is a CI tool. There are others, like I think one called Bamboo. There are so many of those, so you can check online the CI tools, but at least Jenkins is one of those tools, CI tools, which are actually mostly used out there. You will also find these CI/CD tools in the cloud. If you go to AWS, if you're someone who's already familiar with AWS, you'll actually find AWS pipelines, you'll find Azure pipelines. So these are the CI/CD tools in the cloud environment. So once you understand them first before even you go to the cloud, it will be easier for you to learn the pipelines in a cloud environment. Number 6, you definitely have to learn about monitoring. Definitely when applications are already deployed, there has to be some form of monitoring, at least for you to know that the service is working as expected. And if there's an issue, then you need to bring it back to the developers for them to correct if it's a coding issue, and then it goes back through the cycle of CI/CD. That's why CI/CD tools are really important. So you must have monitoring tools to tell you if an application is working well, or if it needs to be taken back to developers for any corrections. And definitely you also need, if you look at these application monitoring tools, Prometheus and Grafana are mostly used to monitor containerized applications. So you need to maybe learn about how they work, and then some others like Zabbix, Nagios, those are can also be used to monitor any other application. And then of course you also need to monitor your infrastructure. You need to make sure that your infrastructure is okay. So you use tools like New Relic, and there are others also which you can check out. So point number 7, as a DevOps engineer, you definitely need to understand infrastructure design. So things like to do with high availability, maybe scalability, reliability, and things like that, depending on what you're deploying at that particular time. And last but not least, you need to have a programming language that will enable you to write scripts for automation purposes. So I've seen Python and Go being used a lot, but of course you probably have a language that you're already familiar with that can help you to write those automation scripts. So that's it as a roadmap for a DevOps engineer. So if I can run through from the first one to the last one without going into details again, is be comfortable with an operating system, Windows and Linux, and mostly the use of the command line. Have good basic understanding of network protocols and some basic networking. Definitely understanding of infrastructure when you talk of physical servers, virtual machines, containers, and cloud infrastructure. Understand infrastructure as code and configuration management tools that will enable you to automate provision of services and infrastructure. CI/CD tools, which are continuous integration and continuous deployment tools, which you really need to understand how they work and how they make the work of a DevOps engineer easier, or maybe work of a developer and operation engineers easier. Number 6, understand definitely monitoring tools, because anything you deploy, you must monitor. Just make sure that it's operating as are required. Number 7, infrastructure design, things to do with high availability, scalability, reliability, and such. And definitely a programming language that will enable you to write automation scripts. So these are I feel like I kind of put together something that can easily help you in your journey to becoming a DevOps engineer. Make sure that you go back to my video of who is a DevOps engineer before you come and watch this one, because that one will help you to at least get to understand who is considered a DevOps engineer. When does a DevOps engineer comes in? When you're deploying applications. So kindly watch that video, and then you come and watch this as a continuation, just to help you understand where to get started from as you plan your journey to becoming a DevOps engineer. So I hope this is informative enough. If you feel like you have any questions about this, kindly let me know in the comment sections. If you also feel like there's something which I left out, kindly also comment in the comment sections. If you're a DevOps engineer and you're watching this, also let me know if there's anything extra that has been working for you as a DevOps engineer that we need to know. Because as I said, guys, in this YouTube channel, you want to uplift one another. You want to help each other to upskill in different ways. So sharing what you have is really, really key for us to at least add to our our collection of knowledge, if I can say that. So kindly comment in the or leave that information in the comment section. So guys, thank you so much for following up to this point. Please watch the video to the end, as I always request. Kindly share as much as possible, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel. So continue enjoying your new year. I wish you all the best as you plan to become a DevOps engineer, and let's meet in the next video. Goodbye.